Greetings, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for attending my frivolity and my hilarity and my attempt at information. And I got to thinking, you know, I did a video where I showed you a bunch of 10-inch records, and I did a video where I showed you, I did a very brief techno overview. My intention is not for this to be, hey, look what I've got. Whoa, it's show and tell time. Even though I have been collecting electronic music since the mid-90s, when the scene was really hot, in my estimation. I got a Boomcat now and listen to everything on there. It just doesn't do much for me. I don't know. I do like contemporary artists like Loxil. He's really fantastic. The Haxon Cloak, this really kind of bass, morphing, sludgy, slow-moving, tectonic plate shifting kind of music. I love that stuff. But there isn't a whole lot I'm really into compared to what was happening back in the day with drum and bass and big beat music and trip house and all that stuff. But anyway, in the world of audio channels, there's one fellow with an audio channel who for a while would say, he doesn't say it anymore, that my channel is hip because I'm listening to electronic music and metal, unlike those old fuddy-duddies who listen to classical and jazz. And to me, that's really, that kind of thinking serves no one, especially somebody who calls himself an audiophile or even a music lover, particularly if you're into hi-fi. I believe, and not even all my fellow writers of stereophile really pursue this, that you should listen to all forms of music when evaluating a hi-fi system, because all forms of music, each form of music has their own thing. There is nothing like subsonic deep synth bass to really test your speakers in that regard once you're used to that tone coming out of an electronic record. There's nothing like that. I mean, it's, you know, the kind that is so they're just really, really deep, you know, like to the bottom levels of audible hearing. Consequently, with classical records, you have, on a really great orchestral recording, a lot of instruments, a dense sound stage, you have incredible dynamics, and it's all produced naturally. For a system to reproduce all of that well, dynamics, imaging, that's what was so amazing about the Technics FSOL 1000. No matter what the recording, I heard every line in perfect ambient space. That blew me away. And it you know, really masked strings, crazy percussion, big dynamics, huge crescendo, didn't phase it. Not all systems can reproduce that kind of dynamic swings with like 30 instruments at a time. So that's something that classical music really only does. You know, those kind of complex classical arrangements and scores. And then, you know, acoustic jazz is a great way to check your system for just a natural sound. Vibraphones, piano does the attack. The piano keys, the hammers on the strings, the mallets on the, whatever they call those things in a marimba, that attack should be flowing and resonant and beautiful, not hard and cut off, truncated and metallic sounding. So that's the thing to listen for, and deep. You know, not a lot of systems can really do the full range of an acoustic bass well recorded with the full body of a bass, the full string attack, coherent top to bottom. So each style of music has its own thing. So I thought I'd show you some of my really beloved electronic records collection. Even when everything went to CD, I kept all my electronic LPs, because I just kind of knew they wouldn't all come out on LP, on CD. Let's just run through these suckers, which I'm really happy to have. I'm a big fan of Air, the French duo, who I don't know if they're still producing work, but they did so many great albums. Casanova, this was an EP, and I have a couple different versions of this. This is the other version. Crystal Castles, weird cover on Casablanca, Donna Summer's label. I have a lot of modern stuff. Laurel Halo, female electronic artist, wonderful stuff, beautiful tones, unusual textures. That's the great thing about electronic music. You know, it's all textures and tones and deep synth bass, and it takes you somewhere that other music doesn't go. For quite a long time, I was a big fan of Oneohtrix Point Never. And I bought all his records in about the space of a month. I remember taking these records out to John DeVore to hear them at his place. And he was like, well, I don't know, man, it's just a bunch of arpeggios. And he was right. I like the arrangements, a lot of unusual sounds. He went a lot of unusual places. I wrote for Electronic Musician, first remix, then EQ, then it turned into Electronic Musician for quite a while. And so I was able to interview a lot of these artists. And I learned a lot about electronic music. And it's funny, when I first started writing about the music, everyone, more Oneohtrix Point Never, at that time, which I guess was, I don't know, early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2010, heck, I don't know, I got a horrible memory. But back then, all the artists were using software versions of like classic echo chambers or reverbs or space echoes or you know, famous compression boxes and all this kind of stuff. And it was odd. There's another one. Because they went from using software versions of these, in many instances, really hallowed units, like a Fairchild limiter and certain compressors, and I can't think of all the devices, Tektronix stuff, to where those companies then started reproducing those classic hardware synths that had been software synths back to, not synths, but back to hardware versions. So everything sort of came full circle. The great FKA Twigs, I love her, I'll buy anything with her. I asked somebody at Rough Trade out in Williamsburg, what do you call this music? She said, modern R&B. Okay, that makes sense to me. A great Kraftwerk record on Vertigo, so I think this must be an original pressing, torn up on the back. It was also interesting to see, you know, as a drummer, drummers were terrified at one point of drum machines taking over everything, and for a while they did, but then people wanted to hear natural drums back on tracks, rock tracks and dance tracks. That's when you saw drummers like Denny Fongheiser and Kenny Aronoff become so popular, or J.R. Robinson, because people wanted that natural feel again. Well, what's so weird is what no one saw coming well beyond the drum machine was the full-scale takeover of every instrument by software synths. A friend of mine sent me the other day there's a new software synth version of Nils Fram put together a software synth version of a piano for Contact, the Native Instruments company that does drum machines or keyboards. And it was like, you know, you watch the video and look what we've done. We're, with new sampling capability, we've created the ultimate piano. So you have your piano, then the software piano, and it's just like, you know, to where most pop music now on the top 10, if you listen to Rick Beato, which I do, most of it's just a dude or a female producer and a singer and a bunch of samples. I was a huge fan of the very prolific fretless bass artist Squarepusher, Tom Jenkinson. I loved his whole drum and bass, drill and bass thing. To me, that was really revolutionary drum and bass at the time, taking the Amen Brother loop and just going mad with it. Spy Mania, another Squarepusher record. And it's funny, it has a dress on here. This is from Send Mullets to Spy Mania, care of No Future, 50 Grand Parade, Brighton, East Sussex. Manufactured and produced by Zoom. But when you introduce Feed Me Weird Things, which is the great iconic records of this era in electronic music or drum and bass, I went to England and interviewed him for Raygun or somebody, and I went to his home, and he was playing all these Dizzy Gillespie records. That kind of blew my mind. There was his fretless bass. He was way into Jocko, which you could hear on his records. He had such a frenetic sensibility, and I really loved what he was doing. Over time, I think what he did, he almost became like a parody of himself. I wasn't as crazy about this stuff, but still a brilliant artist, you know, an innovative artist. Anyway, you got to have your Aphex Twin records. I interviewed Aphex Twin in about 1997 or 96. I love this album cover. This was such an amazing album cover by Aphex Twin. And at that time, he was way into paintball. So we had an idea, my publisher and I, my editor and I, Randy Bucasta, let's get him to go and play paintball with you. Through his publicist, they agreed to do it, and we got there. It was Analog Bubble Bath. And he came, and I used to stay at this little B&B called St. Margaret's near Russell Square. It was a cheap, great breakfast, and he got there, and he just could not stop laughing. He thought it was the funniest place he'd ever seen. because it was very much like your granny's living room or something. Speak Soon, Sons of the Morning, Teebs and Prefuse 73. But he refused to go play paintball with me. And honestly, he was just a dick. Prefuse 73, everything she touched turned Aphexian on Warp. Great cover. I found these singles just a while ago, To Rococo Rot on City Slang. They made some really great records in the mid-90s. I think that's right. Very sort of Rococo-ish. Very detailed and full of sound. Your electronic collection is not complete without something on hyperdub. Then I have a bunch of one-offs by artists I never heard of before or since. This is Rival Consoles. Another Rival Consoles. Nautilus on Planet Mu, who also produced a bunch of great electronica. Loops Haunt, Exits. I don't know. Great album cover though. On Black Aces, this is 2014. The Haxon Cloak. This is some spooky, weird horror music. Low-end, bassy, crazy. I love this strange shit music. It's really dark. This is like being tied under a ship as it's trawling somewhere through the Antarctica. And you are just freezing and dying under this ship and hearing all these strange sounds. It's really malevolent stuff. Lawrence, A Day in the Life. Recondite. I believe this has a bunch of cool low-end sounds. Gerald Cleaver, Signs. Gerald is one of the finest jazz drummers in North America. Made many great records. A great drummer out of Detroit. Made many acclaimed jazz records. I mean, a heavy, heavy cat. And he makes electronic music. And I really dug this record. Recorded during 2017, 2019. Another Squarepusher classic on Spy Mania. You know, he sort of took he had an absurd way for titling his tracks in the same way that Aphex Twin did, or does. Q Number, Eviscerate, Male Pill 5, 213 Maritime Epsosis, Eviscerate version, by Mania Theme. This is from 1995. Another classic of the genre, in my opinion, Air's Walkie Talkie on Astralworks. I just love the sound they got. Sort of loungy, great synths. They wrote great pop songs, really cool layered vocals. There's a song called Run. I believe it's on this record. It's on a different record. That kind of reminded me, had a beautiful layering of voices, sort of like 10cc's I'm Not in Love. I was a huge fan of this group called Leica, Guy Fixon and Margaret Fiedler. They just created beautiful, dreamlike drum and bass. This is the Record Store Day version of the record, of their first record. And this is the original version of it that has real stamps, Russian stamps of Leica the dog, and real pressing, real, mailing slips and stuff. But I just love what they did. I still put this record on and I just fall in love with it. It's so great. They did a couple other records and they all had this a similar, insular, beautiful, rolling, head trip kind of space. Of course, you can't have an electronic collection and not have Tangerine Dream, Phaedra, 1977. I think this is their first album, Electronic Meditation. I love Tangerine Dream, man. Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk. That's the big dogs for me in electronic music, as far as, who really kicked it off. And I always buy their records when I see them. This one's pretty common, Rubicon on Virgin. Future Sound of Jazz compilation on Compost. These started out on CD, then did a few on vinyl. They have nothing to do with jazz, but they sounded really cool, and I always collected them. They're a really great sampling of what was happening in that era. This is 2018, not that long ago. Future Sound of Jazz of, 13 from 2017. Zebra. I wrote down here that has a lot of great low notes. Propeller Heads. They had a couple of great tracks, including Take California, where they sampled Richard Nixon, and they had a couple tunes with Shirley Bassey. History Repeats Itself. This was on Mowax, James Lavelle's label, I believe. Just really, really fun. I paid $35 for this at Academy. Just a really incredible grooves, really happening, man. This is great, however you can find it. Another one-off on Butterscotch Records. Michael Jorgensen. 45 RPM single by Cold Cut, a ninja tune. Cold Cut, very important duo in the history of electronic music, or dance music really. Another classic electronic dance music on Warp. Nightmares on Wax. He made a bunch of records after this, but in my opinion, none of them got close to this. This was just such an amazing put it on and fall out in the vibe record, man. Amazing record. Another classic of the genre. Massive Attack Mezzanine, that had the amazing Teardrop and all these amazing songs. What a great group these guys are. I think they have made a couple of records since then, and all their records are great. I think this is just my favorite, and it's got such a bizarre, weird cover. I believe that this group is called The Knife. Excellent, current, electronic, great stuff. This couple 12-inch singles by Luke Wiebert, aka Wagenkreist, aka Plug. He has an amazing album, I have it here somewhere, Drum and Bass for Papa, that came out at about the same time as Squarepusher's Feed Me Weird Things. I do listen to modern electronic music, or whatever you call it, Floating Points. I was also a big fan of Talvin Singh, who made a lot of chill out music with his tablas, and he was a really cool individual. 2001, Super Silent. This is actually a group, but they seemed like sounded like a DJ. Boards of Canada, which is what I'm playing right now. Spooky Music. These records used to be impossible to find, then they reissued all of them, I believe, on a record store day. And it's almost impossible to tell the reissues from the original ones. But man, I love these guys. Two Scottish blokes, two British blokes, the Future Sound of London. This is another great, ominous recording. Gary Dugans, and I forgot the other guy's name, but they were a blast to talk to. They had wild imaginations, and they were saying all this crazy shit, and they backed it up with these wild records. This was reissued in 2016. Fortet started out really big and banging, then he kind of simpered away. I don't know. These guys have a new album out. I don't know if anybody worked it, but this is another classic. Exit Planet Dust by the Chemical Brothers. I interviewed them a million times. Every time I walk in the room, they'd go, "Welcome back, Bill Clinton." They were quite funny. But this is a great, this is just classic big beat. Fun stuff, man. These guys were like machines with this stuff. Air, 10,000 Hertz Legend. This is an electronic record from the Japanese musician known as Cornelius, who makes this real kind of Brian Wilson soft-inspired, hook-laden pop. And that's what this sounds like, very soft, dreamy electronic music. Oh, and look at this, it's got a beautiful, isn't that cool? Gio Gotti, the last Boards of Canada record I bought that was on vinyl. I don't know if there's more, there probably is, I don't know. More Boards of Canada. More Boards of Canada. 1998, more Boards of Canada. Campfire Head Phase. Lamb, this amazing duo from Manchester. Had a beautiful singer, man, I was crazy about her. And they produced very unusual music. I don't think it ever really caught on. Hot Butter! This was a big hit in the 70s, 1973. I can't remember which song was a hit, but the titles are funny. Slag Solution, Sound Simple, Percolator, Wheels, Skokie, Spacewalk, The Masterpiece, Tequila, Syncopated Clock, Mana Mana. Neon Neon, which features Griff Rees from Super Furry Animals, my favorite pop band in the world. This is by the English duo Plone. This was their record from last year. Now their first record is a masterpiece in my estimation. I don't think it's available on vinyl. It was just simple. It sounded like children's music. It sounded like a child playing on an electric thumb kalimba. It just had this sweet, dreamy, but with beat sound. I forgot the name of the first Plone album. Klaus Schulze, Cyborg. What year is this on Brain Records? There's no year. He looks like a cyborg to me. Gatefold. What the world will be when the cyborgs rule. Very good. Static sound system. They made some cool singles. Another classic LP, Cruder and Dorfmeister. Damn, these guys are great. On Mowax, on G-Stone, which I think was their own label. And finally, you can't go wrong with a Ninja Tune sampler. And that's all I have to say, and thank you, and please like and subscribe. Bye-bye.